A federal ruling on the constitutionality of California's death penalty could have national implications. Is capital punishment a broken system? It's a discussion we'll have with the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center. I'm Angela Ray. This is DC Breakdown. Let's get started.
Breaking through the rhetoric, breaking down the issues from the nation's capital. This is DC Breakdown.
A federal judge in California has struck down that state's death penalty law. The ruling is expected to be appealed and could eventually land before the United States Supreme Court. Richard Dieter, executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, joins us here in the studio. Thank you. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Were you taken aback or surprised by this?
I was surprised it happened in this case. What the judge said, however, is something that a lot of people in California have been noting, including the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court called the death penalty dysfunctional.
Now, we do want to point out that since 2006, the death penalty has sort of been put on hold there, and that had to do more with the cocktail that was being used. Is that right?
That's right. No executions in California for 8 years, and a lot of that has to do with the lethal injection challenges. But California has been slow to carry out executions for the past 35 years. It's very unpredictable, and that's what the judge's concern was, that it's affecting a few, and yet we have this huge system that goes through the courts. It makes no sense, he said.
Let me quote Judge Cormac J. Carney, who was a George W. Bush appointee. He said, quote, "Inordinate and unpredictable delay has resulted in a death penalty system in which very few of the hundreds of individuals sentenced to death have been or even will be executed by the state," which is your point. Now, I think most of us, when we think of death row inmates, I think of someone who is literally going to be on death row for 25 plus years. Because these appeals take so long, what is it that takes so long? Why is someone on death row for so long?
Well, in California, the particular problem is the size. 750 people on death row. All of those cases have to go through one court, the California Supreme Court, and they can only deal with so many cases at a time. All of them have to have lawyers appointed. There aren't enough lawyers willing to take the money that the state is paying to do these cases. So you wait 4 to 5 years just to get your appeal started. The appeal then takes 4 or 5 more years because they can only deal with a few at a time, et cetera. And the net result is 20, 25 years before you're done with the appeals process.
And in some ways, it feels like you're lying to the victim. You know, you said, okay, that person committed a crime so heinous against your loved one, we're going to make sure this guy gets the death penalty, and someone's waiting for this guy to die, and he never does. I mean, more likely he's going to die of natural causes behind bars.
That's exactly right. This judge was not saying he has great sympathy for Mr. Jones, the defendant, and the time he's on death row. What he's saying is we're lying to the people. We're lying to the victims' families. We're pretending we have a death penalty, whereas in reality, you know, 1 out of 100 may be executed 25 years later. That's not deterrence. It's not even retribution. It's people should know it's life without parole with an occasional few randomly selected. That makes no sense, and that's a cruel punishment.
From my understanding, in California for the past 35 years, 900 people have been sentenced to death, and only 13 have been executed. It seems to me that California, and you pointed this out initially, has never really applied the death penalty. It's on the books, but it's not really applied very often. But there still are, as you pointed out, 700 plus people who are on death row. Come on, California, be honest with yourself. Back to what you said, you guys can't handle the load. How about life in prison with no opportunity of parole?
Yeah, there's an ambivalence there in California. On one side, you have, for example, a governor, an attorney general who have deep reservations about the death penalty. Then you have prosecutors all over the state. They're returning death sentences, 25 a year. So death row grows and grows but the executions are not carried out. The appeals aren't even concluded, and so you have this terribly wasteful system. And you know, the split being we want the death penalty, but we really don't want to have it like Texas.
Right.
But that makes no sense. And this judge is calling California to the task of do something about this. This makes, you know, I can review each case, but I'm instead telling you to look at the system.
What's the far-reaching impact of this decision? We understand that it's got to go to the appellate court. It's going to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which sometimes a lot of people don't care what the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has to say, because while that's those crazy people out west. That's the California. Talk about the Ninth Circuit.
Well, first of all, the Ninth Circuit does have control over all of California, whereas this individual judge just has control over his case.
Right.
So there is power there, and of course, Ninth Circuit also governs other states like Arizona and Alaska and Hawaii. I mean, it has a deep reach. But of course, the final word is the U.S. Supreme Court, and they have frequently overturned the Ninth Circuit. So this case in California that just happened has some ways to go, and I'm not sure it's going to withstand all of that. But the message, the issue, that's out there, and it's not just an issue for California.
Right.
Pennsylvania's had 200 people on death row. Hasn't had an execution for even longer.
Yeah, unlike Texas, which has you on death row for at least 10 minutes, and then you're. But Texas is a different case. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and a lot of states say we don't want to be like Texas. Although I'd have to say that even in Texas, it's taking 10 to 12 years. Even in Texas, death sentences are way down. They're having some second thoughts, believe it or not, about the death penalty. And if that's the case, I think the whole country is going to be wondering.
Is it morally that Texas has issue with the death penalty, or is it, as you said before, that the system is just such that there's too many cases and not enough judges and it just takes too long?
Well, in Texas, they've had a lot of mistakes. They've had sleeping lawyers. They've had innocent people probably even executed, certainly freed. So there's been a sense that we don't want to be the, you know, hit on every time as the example of a dysfunctional.
We don't want to be the Wild Wild West.
Yeah,
I'm a Texan, so I know.
So we're going to be more careful. We still agree with the death penalty, but we're going to be more careful. But that means you've got a slower system. Texas is becoming more diverse ethnically.
That's right.
There's not the craze to get executions that there once was. So I think if that's happening in Texas, the rest of the country is wondering, are we getting anything really from this death penalty that we have to have? I mean, you're getting a little execution, 39 executions last year. Doesn't make a dent in our system. It really is meaningless. So it's symbolic executions.
Look in your crystal ball quickly for the future. What direction do you see the country going in with respect to having the death penalty just completely gotten rid of?
You know, I think many people will still support it. I think we're not going to come to the point where a supermajority says it's immoral and a human rights violation. But I do think we're getting to the point where it's becoming irrelevant, where it's becoming an embarrassment, both internationally and even among ourselves. It doesn't work. Government programs that don't work, we don't want to pay for anymore.
Richard Dieter, thank you so much, of the Executive Director of the Death Penalty Information Center. We always appreciate your insights, and we're going to have you back because the Ninth Circuit of, you know, it's got to go
more to happen in this case.
There's more to happen in this case.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Is the White House putting immigration ahead of what is happening in the African American community? That discussion is next on DC Breakdown.